raise family, and a friend, owner of Kudan Group, called me right when COVID started, and he said, "Get your license, please. I'm over my head in business. I have clients that are just coming at me." And this was during COVID, and I said, "Well, that's interesting. Okay, fine." So I got my license, and the clients didn't. Nothing came at me. It was like the usual business. You're hustling for every client that you can get. But what I did notice is that there was this great influx of creativity from people who lost their jobs because the restaurants were shut down.
Right.
Staff was out of work. And they were forced to find ways to make money. And so a lot of people resorted to Instagram to market their product. So you didn't have to pay Groupon anymore. You didn't need a brick and mortar because they were cooking and sharing kitchens and using social apps to pick up food. So the traditional brick and mortar establishment isn't necessary anymore, but they're still paying rent. So a lot of these places went out of business, and landlords were having a problem having their tenants pay rent. So the business brokerage end picked up because we had to try to help people sell their businesses and then get out of these leases. And landlords were stuck. They weren't getting a break. It wasn't fair. They were stuck with negative income. So trying to find a way to navigate and adapt to helping the landlords get out of a dead tenant and a tenant get out of from under their head, we found that there was a huge demand for ghost kitchens, which was mentioned at the very end of the conversation in there. So I have had throughout the nation people calling me saying, "I represent a company that wants to come into your city and take kitchens that are dead in hotels, restaurants, vacant all over the place. And we just want to use it so that we can have food made and these delivery apps come and pick it up." The problem is that the landlords are having a hard time letting go of the traditional 5-10 year lease, and it's really hard to get them to embrace, how about a year lease? You got a body that's giving you rent. If it doesn't work out, have a 6 or year look-see to see if it's going to manage itself, and finding places that the landlord's saying, "You know what, this isn't making sense. This keeps working out. Let's make some money." So that makes sense. Landlords and other brokers who know kitchen space, who know of black iron or whatever the mechanical stuff is in that's been drywalled over. So finding that kind of stuff.
If you were all sitting in the main panel, which area in the ballroom, which I'm assuming you were, our last panel was tug of war. And so it was suburbs versus city. My next question is kind of like that. Suburbs versus city. Which submarkets are doing well and which are struggling?
Can you start? I'm going to speak towards the urban retail. People on this panel that know the suburban retail far better than I do. But the Chicago urban retail is really a tale of the neighborhood. And if you look at the true business central district, the Loop, I think it came out at some point today, but the numbers that we have, it's about 28% occupied. And that includes the hotels, the office, and the retail. Chicago MSA, or the Chicago city, has lost over 41 major restaurants on subways that are not coming back. They aren't going to reopen. But you can't survive as a retailer downtown in the central business district at 28, 30, 35, 40, 50% occupied. Lunch, nobody's going out for cocktails, nobody's going dinner. So until that downtown area gets to 50%, the north of that continues to be crime, and people are afraid to, some of the employees are afraid to work. So the issue everybody's working from home. So if they're not going to work in the Loop and you're in the middle of Lincoln Park or Uptown or Lakeview, and you want to go, you'll go out.
Right,
You'll go
because
out
they're
in your
still having business lunches or don't feel like cooking, so.
Yeah, so the neighborhood surrounding Central Business District are fine, and there are new tenants coming in, and so they're exploding. We can barely handle business in those neighborhoods. West Loop, absolutely on, but it is the good and the bad and the ugly depends upon the specific neighborhood and who's there during the day.
Rick, who are you going to defend, the city or the suburbs? Which is the best?
Well, certainly the suburbs don't have, to offer what the city does in many respects, but, I think people have been, cocooning more the last few years. There's certainly been, more of a flight to the suburbs for more open space and, larger lots per se, things of that nature. I think the suburban quadrants that were, have done well over the years, whether it's the Schomburgs, the Oak Brooks, the Vernon Hills, of the world, the Orland Parks, they, continue to, figure it out and do well because they've got the mechanics in place, and the cohesiveness with their village boards, their economic development directors, community development directors, all working in cohesion. I think the communities that did well-defined TODs over the last few decades, like the Arlington Heights, LaGrange's, Libertyvilles, et cetera, Palatine's, Mount Prospect, Des Plaines, have all, survived and figured out how to, keep seepage of people leaving their communities. And, you've seen a lot more, al fresco dining created, which has created, great vibe in a lot of these downtown areas in the summer times and that. A lot of the restaurants in the city that were forced to create these outdoor igloos and cabanas, at extraneous costs and development logistics, are fearful they're going to have to go through that again this year. I mean, who wants to eat outside, in an igloo tonight when it's going to be 9 below? I think in the meantime, restaurants and retailers outside of Cook County that don't have the same, vax mandates and things of that nature will continue to thrive while, Cook County has, more restrictive forces in place.
David, what's your thinking on this? City or burbs?
It's interesting. I mean, really what Rick had said is really the truth. I mean, all of our properties are in the suburbs, but I think that, if I had to choose between myself where I would probably go, I'd probably stay in the suburbs. I think there's a lot more to be offered here. I mean, in the suburbs, again, the city is, it's parking, it's what's open, what's not open, and again, now with this whole mandate, what are you going to do? And are they going to close? Are they going to be 50%? Do you have to sit outside? I think summertime for sure, from what I've experienced, it's all been suburbans. The restaurants are, again, they're using their parking lots. I mean, Highwood, for an example, has done a tremendous job to turn their little downtown into a booming place during the warmer times, even with COVID. So not that I wouldn't go downtown. I just feel at this point, there's really very limited for me to do downtown that I can't do in the suburbs. And Rick really covered it all. I mean, really said it really nicely.
The parking thing is an interesting thing to bring up. Here we are in a hotel, so that kind of goes back to your area, Maria, of hospitality. And part of the reason that we chose this Hyatt as opposed to the Hyatt we used to have at downtown. There were other factors too, but part of the reason was the parking was so much better for attendees here. And, that's something, COVID or no COVID, it is a big factor. And I just feel like maybe sometimes people want less hassle because they feel everyday life is so much hassle right now. Is that what you think, Maria?
Well, I have been fortunate enough to live in the North Shore, and I also have. I'm fortunate enough to live in the North Shore, but I also have a place in St. Joe, so I'm able to go back and forth between the two. And when we were really on lockdown, I spent most of the suburbs because
I can't hear her.
Neither can I.
there were no places to go that were open, so that was much easier and enjoyable to stay in the suburbs. Now, I have clients that call me that are from out of town, and they say, "I want to be in Chicago. I want to open a restaurant." And some of them are fast service, and I like to be in the loop. And I'd love to see the city get back to where it was, but I have an obligation to say, "Have you been in the loop lately?" Because a landlord, I don't want to set a landlord up, and I don't want to set a client up to fail when it's not the time. So you are correct. In the outskirts of the business district, I can't find properties. Everybody wants the same thing in the sweet spots, and same for the suburbs. Really, it's the same thing. But I did enjoy dining on Southport, North Southport by Irving Park. In summer, they would shut the whole street down, and families were walking together. And yes, the parking was not great. It was difficult. I walked a lot more, but it was great to see that these restaurants that are trying to adapt and stay alive were figuring out ways to do that. And when I first saw the igloos, I thought, "Oh my gosh, Chicago, really? That's going to be the shortest season." But the truth is, they do this in Germany, they do it in Amsterdam, they do it in Europe, which are colder climates. They're just used to it. So I would love to see this momentum carry forward, even if COVID, becomes nothing. That restaurants continue this because even if you go on Clark Street, to see everybody together outside, but together, it feels great. It's a different side of the city that I haven't seen before, and I love it. Same for the suburbs as well.
On one of our main panels, they briefly touched on retail, and they specifically mentioned grocery. And correct me if I'm wrong, Keith, I don't think before this year we ever talked about grocery and retail, correct?
Oh, and I have a controversial opinion, and I want my good friend Rick to respond. The question is the typical grocery anchored shopping center long for this world? I mean, we know we lost malls, right? The enclosed malls, there are 24 in Chicago MSA, 5 were profitable last year. But now, what's happened, or what's going to happen to the typical grocery anchored center? I'll be brief, but as Rick knows, you sign a jewel in the center of a center, you discount the rent, you fill in with 20 or 30 smaller tenants around it, you get your money from the smaller tenants, and they made their money from the shopper that walked into the jewel and then unloaded their groceries, and oh, by the way, went to the dry places. That model is gone. I mean, I always joke, remember when we used to go to the grocery? You don't do that anymore. You go to Walmart, you go to Target, you go to specialty stores, now you have Rocket Foods that delivers stuff to your door in an hour. And furthermore, turn television on. There must be 15 different groups that will deliver groceries in bulk or mass, or whether it's home meats or the fish group. I mean, they'll deliver to your house. So there's problem. That means one, that people aren't going to go out to the grocery store as much, and two, when they go to Target or they go to Whole Foods, they might stay in their car and do a pickup and have it loaded in the trunk, or they might stay outside of the store and open their box with their number on it, pick up their grocery bags without walking into the store. And you got to remember, I mean, grocery stores are on a 2 or 3% margin. They don't make a lot of money on the majority of their products. They make the money on the product that's on the end cap, and they make a lot of money on the impulse purchases that are by the cash registers, right? I mean, the gum, the magazines, the goofy stuff that you pick up while you're waiting in the cash register line, and little Johnny says, "Mommy, can I have these 2 or 3 things?" That's where stores make a lot of their money. You take that away, you take the impulse purchase, you take the in-store sampling away, trying to get people to buy things that they weren't planning to buy. You have them not going in the store. Now you have Amazon coming out with a cashierless concept, and that's coming into the Chicago market where you don't have to stand by the cashier and wait 15 minutes to get out and buy more things while you're doing that. So all of these trends are leading towards a titanic shift again away from the typical grocery store model, grocery store community center model. Because the smaller stores that feed on the person going into Jewel, they're not going to make money as much anymore. And so I think we're going to see more of what, the Targets, the freestanding Targets, where there is no ancillary retail, and Walmarts where there's no sign, there might be some outlots, but we're predicting the next shoe to drop is going to be on the grocery anchor community center. So,
Anything to add to that, Rick or David? Uh-oh.
Hey, Rick, we can't hear
Rick,
you.
we can't hear you. Rick? David? Okay, sorry about that.
Well, then I'm right.
Yeah, there we go.
That's it.
I don't know if
There's
the
no
mountains are
argument.
moving,
So
so I don't know
every
that
single thing I said comes to the mouth of the Lord, and I'm 100% correct.
I'm telling you, that's why I call them. Okay, so what are some of the biggest challenges for retail going forward in 2022? After all, the whole purpose of today's event was a forecast.
Start?
Sure. Well, my challenge, I would say my challenge is that I would hope to have more flexibility from landlords in terms of financing these clients that have come out of this COVID. Instead of, again, signing traditional 5-10 year leases with a personal guarantee, a lot of these people that I'm representing are younger and they don't have the history that's necessary. So I've tried to come up with some creative ways, and they have floating guarantees, floating 1 year. I had one client tell me that she, for 20 years, had been in a space and she paid her rent with food, which I'm like, I can't take my commission in food, but I like the concept where maybe you could work something, I've had spaces where they said, we would love to have them in as a ghost kitchen if they stay open for the certain hours to service other people in the building who need coffee or breakfast. So negotiating that. I would also like to see flexibility and being open to pop-up space for shorter periods of time. And I would also like to see the possibility of creating incubator spaces, which really don't exist right now, but it's a huge, it's going to happen. There's a big wave of that, and basically it's giving a space to somebody who wants to try a food concept out and letting them have their wings and take off and then succeed somewhere else. And I think it would be easy if these big retail places that are just sitting in dead space would say, you know what, let's just at least fill it. Let's put somebody in here and let's try something new.
Right, it would have to be a restaurant that already existed because, for a pop-up, especially an experimental one, no one's going to have all the right equipment, right? The kitchen equipment and everything.
Right. Now, I will tell you, I'm sorry, I keep going here, but normally big chains that you think, they're signing these big long-term leases, they're also pulling out. I've seen a ton of Starbucks close, and you think they'd be there forever.
Exactly.
So these places are appearing. One of the challenges I face is if I talk to a seasoned broker, they know which places that used to be at a place, then it was a hair salon. They know what's behind the walls. I'd love to see landlords and management companies give a little more information. I know it's possible to go behind there, and there is an existing. Share that information. I think it would be very helpful, and they'd see a lot more traction.
Let me see if we can get David and Rick back. Rick, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Beautiful, David. David, can you hear me? No, still for David, unfortunately. Rick, do you have any comments on your 2022 to prediction, your forecast?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you
Yes.
hear me?
We can hear you, Rick.
Okay, good.
Great.
Yeah, I think, again, it's going to be a slow start to the year in that. I think you know, retailers and tenants are going to continue to get through this next round of the variant. I think on the positive side, a lot more people are going to get it, but it's going to pass a lot quicker. I think people are learning how to adjust. I don't think they're looking to go backwards. I think they're tired of such and want to move forward. I think there's a lot of pent up, dollars to be spent. People are looking to, get back out and try and live life as well as possible in that. It's been 18, 24 months of constraint, and I think people are just tired and fed up with it in that.
Let's face it, with retail, okay, there is a built-in cycle. Your clothes aren't going to last forever. Your shoes, it was tough competition for me to buy a couch. I had to wait several months just to have it delivered because evidently everybody sitting at home on their couch wore out and they all needed new ones. So, and of course, groceries and things like you would buy sundry, I would call them at Walgreens, you need it every week. So there's a limit to how much, plain dead anyone can do, but that's owns any of these types of stores or investments in these things, because people are going to be soon knocking at your door, right?
Yes.
COVID or no COVID.
Yeah, I think you said it, and Rick is right also. People are tired of being at home.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to a group, I said, most people have made every single menu item that they know how or want to make. They've ordered from every single restaurant for delivery that they now want to. And now they're like, okay, I'm done with this. I need to get out. I need to spend money. I need to go to new restaurants. I need to go beyond my scope of range that I usually survive in. And that is going to be a very positive continued trend this year. People are tired of being at home. They want to go out. They want to spend money. And, we have two other issues that we've been talking about yet, but it's obstacles. Our biggest downtown obstacles, quite frankly, are crime, taxes, and COVID. And our projection is by June, only one of those will be left. This new virus, the latest variant, will probably be over and have run through its pass by June. And if our mayor doesn't get control of the crime, she won't be the mayor. She probably has until June to try to figure that negative thing in Chicago out. But then the only thing left is going to be Cook County taxes that affects both the suburbs and the city of Chicago. None of us have a solution for that. But if we don't have to deal with COVID as much as we have, or certainly are in the next 30 days, and the crime, which is not just Chicago, it's now going into the suburbs. We had a carjacking in Oak Park, I think, yesterday. And, when the demonstrations hit, every Benny's in the entire Chicago MSA got hit. But if the crime gets under control and COVID gets under control, which we project by June, then we could very well be back on track in absolute full tilt starting in, May, June, July. And that's what we're telling people and talking to tenants about and talking to landlords about. And I think that's a very positive way for us to look at 2022 going forward.
Exactly. What are your thoughts on that, Rick?
I just want to back up because I have one
Sure.
thought I wanted to reference earlier in that. It's just like the city sometimes just, unfortunately, and I love Chicago. I've never lived in Chicago, but I always consider myself a Chicagoan and, brag about it and spend as much time as I can down there. But every time you turn around, they shoot themselves in the foot on something. It was like an example. Last night, I get my first warning for recklessly driving 6 miles, over the posted speed limit. I have no idea where that was at, but I can't imagine, how many countless tens of thousands of others have received those warnings, which will be followed by $35 tickets and $75, $100 tickets, et cetera. At some point, it just adds another layer of, rolling the welcome mat, in instead of out. And for what little revenue it could bring in, or even if it's 10 million, whatever they, projected on it, that there's the seepage back to the suburbs, I think will be well beyond that. So I think at times they're penny wise and dollar foolish.
David? I'm hoping we can get David back. Well, we'll get on the next question. And just to back up for a minute on what we were talking about, there's always going to be expenditures. You have people and they're always going to need to run out of things. I think another misconception that people have about this time period is that everyone's broke, because it's definitely not true. Okay. We talked about some of the challenges of 2022 in the forecast. What do you see as the biggest opportunity if smart investors choose to take that route?
I'll start with that, and I'm interested in everybody's idea, but the smart retailers, and it's starting to separate between the smart and the not so smart. This is a huge opportunity for the smart retailers. I mean, yeah, Starbucks is closing stores, they're upgrading other ones. Their volume was up last year. It's odd so they're just re-engineering themselves to be more profitable. I mean, Target had probably one of their best banner years last year. What's their opportunity? They changed their entire platform, their parking lot, their interior experience, their product line, and the tenants that can do that, that's a huge opportunity for them. The ones that see how to get to the consumer and get their product there, this is a gigantic opportunity because their competitors are half the number of competitors than they had pre-pandemic. So for a retailer, it's figure out how to get the product to the people quickly and efficiently, get your labor cost under control, and get labor and product, as you mentioned. But it's a huge opportunity for a ton of retailers. Plus, there are new retailers coming into the market that weren't there. And those new retailers have huge opportunities. And again, some of that is the quick delivery. If you're a loyal listener and it's 4 o'clock in the morning and you want a can of Diet Coke and you're willing to spend $6 or have your parents stick it on their credit card, there are no less than 4 or 5 new categories of tenants, GoPuff, Gorilla, Rocket Foods. So there's an opportunity for new categories of tenants to come in. For landlords, we're landlords, consultants, and developers. We have to look, as you mentioned, on how we can help tenants and the opportunities for us to do that, to go out and get the our strong. And that's a huge opportunity for us. We just have to look at it and, as you stated, look at the business differently. And if we can do that, then our product will survive and our developments will continue. But I think there are a lot of opportunities for the developers, for the brokers, and for the tenants. You just got to really look.
Maria, I'm curious, with the restaurant being your whole category or mostly your category for retail, what would be the opportunity that they should seize, the turn the lemons into lemonade, pun intended?
Yeah, so there's a lot of opportunity. First of all, I also work with COVID pop-up testing sites, vaccination sites.
They definitely can seize the opportunity, right?
Yes, and I did talk with somebody who was looking for some sites for the government related testing, and I said, well, you only want a short-term lease, right? And she said, we're looking for a couple of years. So I don't know if they're just planning on monitoring it, but that was their projection 6 months ago. I hope they're wrong, but anything COVID related. So thinking out of the box, what you would need if you had COVID. I just talked about this a few weeks ago with you, but I'd be curious to see if there were quarantine rooms. I just came back from vacation. Somebody told me that they got stuck at their hotel for another week in the room with the whole family because they couldn't leave, which was not fun. And what if you don't have the funds to stay another week? So where would they put the money? Does your insurance pay for that? Is that an expense? I don't know. I'm going to investigate that further. I also deal with dispensaries, with licensing and all that stuff. Huge market and dispensary-related businesses, which are going to naturally evolve out of that. So I'm waiting to see where that goes. Pop-up groceries we talked about. I've had clients who own large tracts of buildings that say, I don't want a Starbucks anymore. I want something that's unique and different and built some type of a little corner grocery store because I've got all these people here. What can you bring me? And then lastly, I would just love to see more kitchen spaces. It may be considered because there are these work-live buildings that are being built, these condominiums and apartments. It'd be great if they built them so they were almost like an inclusive resort. I've had people talk to me about they want to put a social area, lounge area, some type of an eating area, something so that people going to work could eat, or at least a workspace where they can go to. So I've had landlords tell me that they're very interested in working with a client who may not be able to pay a lot in rent, but they really need ice cream or bagels or coffee or something, so they want to work with me. So
See, what goes through my head as a consumer is what happens then, just to be devil's advocate for a moment, when this is all over and the pop-up thing, like perhaps there's no need anymore. Then what?
Then you can go back to you. I'd love to see a 5-year or 10-year lease. I mean, no one would like it better than me. That's just,
Right. Now,
great
but
for
the
me.
client, either the client's going to go bigger,
Yes.
right, or longer if the lease is longer, but it still has to be the need for that niche. I
Yes.
thought that in a completely different way, but I guess it's not different. It's like a restaurant when they had all the food trucks, and I thought, well, how long is this fad going to last, and then what? And those are expensive to buy those trucks, and they have the cooking thing inside it.
It's interesting that you bring that up because that was my last thing, and that is food trucks have, there's a problem with food trucks in Chicago, and they can't park more than 200 feet, less than 200 feet away from a brick and mortar restaurant. Like if I'm getting dressed up and I'm going to dinner, I'm not going to say, you know what, let's just stand at the food truck. I have a plan. So I think it would be great, and I know there are things in front of the items in front of the Illinois Supreme Court to address that, but right now you have to have a GPS constantly tracking you if you want to have a food truck. The insurance is very high, and the standards are very difficult. Sometimes you have to make the product somewhere else, like a ghost kitchen, in order to sell in the food truck. So some people are getting around that by using shipping containers and putting them in the middle of a little space, and then that could be a temporary, and it feels the food truck. So these are creative ways restaurateurs are adapting and trying to survive. And since we don't right now have a great food truck policy, more for the retail or the brick and mortar places if they could find a way to take advantage of it.
Okay, great. Rick, what would you say is the wise move for 2022 for your retail people? What opportunity should they seize?
Continue to pivot when you need to pivot. A lot of them again reached into omni-channel efforts that they hadn't been in the past. Again, it's good service. It's doing what staying in your lane and doing what you do well. Sometimes people, tough times, people make bad decisions and they get too far outside of their lane. They try doing things that they don't do well, and their base business suffers because of it. And that, to Maria's point, and I'm sure Keith's seeing it, and as well on that. A lot of my activity still is with restaurant clients. People expanding, they see opportunities, to buy by the pound and get deals that they wouldn't have had a few years ago. Tenants can still drive deals today with, lower guarantees, no guarantees, more free rent. Unfortunately, David's not on to hear this, but, their family's been doing this 40, 45 years. And, they had 300 clients across their portfolio, and they reached out and talked to all 300 of those clients and dealt with them all on an individual basis. They didn't cut the same type of deals and, with tenants across the board. They were all on an individual, need to need basis. And, by and large, they kept their portfolio intact in that. You've got, tenants out there who are just asking for, concessions because that's the thing to do. You got to put your hand out whether we're doing well or not. I'm not afraid to say the name, we had Pizza Hut coming to us in a shopping center, asking for a rent reduction when, we were talking to their employees and could see by the parking lot that their business was thriving. Landlords have to be cognizant of who they're dealing with. Tenants have to learn how to do what they do well and even better, and provide that additional, step of customer service in that because, again, with a lot of the money that's been out there, I have a client who has 30 restaurants and they had highest sales they've ever had, but lowest profit margins. Why? Because they're paying labor costs that they never would have imagined they'd paid before. They paying food costs that they had never seen. And they had a lot of customers coming in with stimulus money who aren't used to, dining out on a regular basis and expect every experience to be like a Michelin star restaurant. When normally you'd have 10 to 12 servers on a Friday night, they'd be lucky to have 5 or 6. Customers wouldn't understand the labor shortage, wouldn't understand they'd have to pay $5 more for a slab of ribs, and it's a perfect hot mess in that. So again, I think for at least first quarter, and possibly sleeping into second quarter, depending on where Omicron or whatever other Greek alphabet follows it, it's going to be survival mode and, continue to hold on to your hat and stay in your lane.
Okay, so for our last question, what new retail categories are expanding in our markets?
I mentioned a couple of those. Just overall state, there's a whole lot of creative people that are taking concepts. Certainly, the last mile delivery, we've been tough products, which again, get stuff now. The spas are still opening. We are starting to use a number of categories related to pets. Pet dogs and cats like they live and work, and we have opened a couple of pet spas. We're currently negotiating with a company that is training for the pet owner and the pet owner commanding classes and training. We did a deal during COVID. It was hysterical. So we're about 3,000 square feet. It's a dog physical therapy area, and this is a human physical therapist. I was hysterical. I've been a physical therapist for 10 years, and I just decided I'm now going to do dogs. And so we went and talked to a vet where he got his training, but he said, this is so much better. They don't complain. They don't get mad. They always have to see the bills get paid on time. He goes, I'm making twice the amount of money that I was making as a human physical therapist with dog physical therapist. And that's been the exemplified great that people are seeing. So we don't know necessarily all of the categories that are coming down on our line, but when people are not going to the office or they're not going to the office at home, they're having time to come up with different ideas and different concepts that we haven't had in the past. I think this is extremely important thing, dog physical therapist, that we can never complain about. It's a great time. Retail is changing, and retail is always changing. COVID is a force of change. We're going to see a lot more creativity in categories, and I will turn it over to you for other categories.
Thank you. So, like I said before, COVID, dispensary, ghost kitchens, pop-up, incubator spaces, all of those things are what I see constantly coming at me. One thing I did want to mention is that a lot of these restaurateurs and hospitality, they receive PPP Right. And there are some stipulations, and they had to spend the money within 2 years from when they get it, and it all has to be paid back by March 2023. So I've had clients say to me, I took some money, I want to keep it, I need to find a place to buy or a bigger space, help me spend more money. So there's a window of time where there is, these people have more money than they normally would. They can't prepay rent with it, but there are ways to, not, to follow the rules and help them. And so there's still going to be a flush of this coming for at least, for the next year, I see.
Interesting. Keith, I wonder about the dog physical therapist. Did you know how they ask you about pain when you go, and they'll say, on a scale of 1 to 10, would you 10 being the highest, how much pain are you in? So how do they manage that with the dog?
No clue. I imagine it'd be like
Is
stepping
it
a
bark
dog's
twice if you're in pain?
Well,
Or
if you've ever stepped in a dog's foot, which I have millions of times, they yelp. So I would imagine you push it until it yelps, and then it's probably the end of the time period. But I'm not a physical therapist or a dog physical therapist, but I think it's a tremendous, and this guy went through 10 of these, and it's just absolutely amazing.
we should have him come be a speaker sometime.
Yeah,
I'll,
yeah,
ma-
we'd
I'll
be happy
moderate
to.
that. Can't have you on that. That sounds
You're right.
good.
We could do one on just creative new concepts.
Maybe he gets bit, and then we have to manage
Yes.
his level of pain.
There you go. I always wonder about that too. The liability insurance is going to go up if he hires people to work for him because of the dog bites, scratches. Rick, what do you see as a new direction something you hadn't thought about in retail?
I don't know if it's so much a new direction, but I think people are, again, looking to get back out and enjoy life again. I think anything that has any experiential aspect to it, and that, on one end of the spectrum, it could be, the axe throwing or, gun shooting ranges. On the more moderate standpoint, it could be the wine, when you go out and, have wine for the evening and do a paint by numbers, sessions at like a Pinot palette or something, cooking classes, hardware stores that do the seminars where you bring your, kids in, or, do it yourself type of, teaching seminars and that. I think people are looking to, get out and roll up their, sleeves and participate and, do life again with other people. That, an interesting, sideline in that is, or something that I pay a lot of attention to, and that is, Gen Z. Gen Z are much more inclined to shop brick and mortar than millennials were. Hopefully that's a sign of things to come, where, millennials were gravitated much more towards, internet shopping. Gen Zs, hopefully, which is the next wave of the future, we'll hopefully see that pendulum swing back in the other direction. But again, they're not looking for the Sears of the world. They're looking for the Warby Parkers and Shinolas and the hipster stores and places you can buy $1,000 winter jacket and go into a tube that gets you 20 below and things of that nature. So retailers are going to have to be the best of the best to continue to strive and thrive.
This is a wonderful panel, and I have an opportunity, I think, for a few moments for questions. Does anyone have questions?
very strong thought on this. The last thing you want to do right now, if you get sick or partially sick or lacerate yourself or have a minor broken bone, is go to the hospital emergency. And hospitals know this, so they are creating their satellite doctors' offices, everything from Northwestern to Rush to what we call a doc in the box, which is physicians healthcare, which I think, I don't even know how many sites they have now. We did 4 of those. But you don't want to go to the hospital because you don't know what stuff you're going to bring home from the hospital. You know, if you don't have some major problem, you're going to sit in the emergency room for about 3 hours, and then you're going to see an intern or a resident. So this whole trend of what you guys are doing is tremendous. It's going to continue, if not accelerate. And then you add on the testing centers and the vaccination centers, which I would argue is also a form of medtail. And I think we're going to have to be tested and getting vaccines for probably the next 3 or 4 years, because each strand you're going to have to get the booster shot for that strand. So I think this is a massively growing, and it will continue to grow, product type. And it's again going to be from the hospitals trying to get to the consumer. Look at all of the Northwestern outpatient centers in the suburbs, Evanston, River North. The River North one is blocks away from the hospital. So that type of product is going to be an extremely high demand for all of them. You know, they pay high rents right now. We don't give any of you much TI as a landlord because you're not going to get it back. I mean, nobody wants the medical TI when they leave. It's kind of like the tanning salons. You know, to try to take tanning salon out is extremely expensive to do because of the electrical issues. But they pay a lot of rent. They want to stay there a long time, and I think that, you know, I think, I'm sorry. The question again was. That's all right. Bottom line, they're great tenant. I sidetracked you. I didn't mean to do that. Yeah, they have no choice. They're going to pay it, and they're going to put it in the bills, and they're going to try to get it from insurance companies. If they can't get it from the insurance companies, they're going to get it from us. But we're going to pay it because of the convenience factor. And I had my son, 29, just was cutting something and opened the end of his finger, and he called me and said, "If I go everywhere but a hospital emergency room." And he went to a physician's immediate care, and they sewed it up and taped it and gave him antibiotics and sent him home when he was out in 45 minutes. And yeah, paid for it. I mean, part of it went to insurance, and we cut a check for the other one. So it's for the consumer, it's the price of the convenience. It's not wait hours for a non-emergency.
Perhaps get sicker by going, I think is what you're.
God knows what you're going to pick up.
Yeah.
In the waiting room or the emergency room.
I would think the beauty shops would be like the tanning thing too, because there's so much pipes for the wash bowl for where they wash their hair. It's only going to be useful to another tenant who's a beauty shop. If you have to pull everything out, then you have all that expense.
Yep.
I think we have a question. Great. Could you speak up, sir, so the people can hear you? We can give you a mic.
Yeah, so Jen, you mentioned as we began that retailers are going through the digital transformation by pivot towards e-commerce from brick and mortar and investing towards their digital landscape. So in order to attract customers with the hybrid approach, how can retailers create a positive shopping experience in the physical space? Companies who are excelling at this are Apple, IKEA, and Target.
Is that for me?
Yes.
Most retailers that I think are going to survive, and we're seeing it all over the place, are they have to have an experience in the store to get the consumers back. So you have sporting goods stores that are now putting in bigger archery ranges, the golf simulators, shotgun rifle ranges, in different locations where that's allowed. I think Rick mentioned hardware stores having a hardware experience, or somebody where you can go in and use the tools and try it, and and try to experiment with that. But it has to be a fun reason and an experience to go into a retail place. You know, I joke that when Whole Foods opened, you know, their big thing was food, trying food, and a guy playing the piano at the end of the cashier line. And that was a big deal. I mean, a guy sitting there playing the piano, and then 4 years later, it's a player piano. The guy's gone, and then the piano's gone. And so that whole experience, they cratered their own experience of doing something positive and different. And the trend has to go the other way for a retailer to survive. They have to create a fun experience to get people out of their houses with their kids and come back into the bricks and mortar. The smart retailers, whether it's the remains of Dick's and, you know, other sporting goods stores, you know, the Wegmans on the East Coast, a grocery store that's done very well. They have a bar attached. They have restaurants attached. Schnook and Lewis, at the end of about 6 o'clock, they roll back a lot of the food. At the front of the store, they have a dance floor. They bring in a band on Friday and Saturday nights, and you can go there to your family, and you can get your fish, and you can get the steak, and you can get the salad from the salad bar. They bring out tables. You can go get the wine. They'll open and chill the wine, and you sit there, and it's a custom restaurant with band and dancing. And that's a good example of a grocer that is thinking out of the box to get people an experience to come in. You wouldn't think of having a family dinner. But they're doing it, and it's working. But that's the whole idea, is get the experience back into your bricks and mortar to get people out of their houses.
Thanks for that. So pretty much being creative in a customer-centric approach.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. And for Maria, you mentioned earlier clients are leasing a one-year contract with their tenants. So given that companies are transitioning to the digital transformation, what are the hurdles for them to renew or extend the lease with their tenant to create a long-term relationship?
Well, the reason that my clients are asking for 1 year is because they're required to guarantee the full term of the lease. So I have clients that would say, I'd love to do a 5-year, but I can't guarantee that. So what I usually try to do is say, well, how about if we guarantee half the lease or 3 years? And how we do that is you can guarantee the first years, and after the first 2, you have a floating rate. And so at any point for the next 3 years, you're on the hook for a year. And it's easier for them to handle it. Landlord says, well, okay, no problem, I have a year to deal with it. But also, you can ask for a, or you can ask for a little bit of abatement at some point. If you don't need it right away, break later on. Just trying to find ways that works for everybody. I'm going to break 1 second. I just want to mention to your comment that I have a partner in technology in terms of experiential. I'm sorry, I have a partner involved with technology in terms of experiential, where he has a directional speaker that you can create something. This product is in Whole Foods, where you can have a little dance area without bleeding out, and this you can create in a retail environment. Special people can have a completely immersive experience, and when they leave it, you don't hear it. And there's a huge uptick in the product requirement because of what's happening now. So you're definitely you're heading in a great direction with that comment. Over to him, if you don't mind.
Those were 2 great questions. Thank you. Anything else? Oh, we have another. Good.
Hello, everybody. So I'm an investment sales broker, and I talk to owners all day long, and a lot of them don't know a lot about flexible leasing or creative tenants. Are there any efforts to educate these landlords as far as the new trends so that they can fill these spaces? A lot of them are getting ready to retire, and sell these strip centers, sell these retail centers, but we're at a point where they have a lot of vacancy and they're just confused as to what to put in there.
Yeah, I would, as a landlord, owner, and broker, they should hire a broker, because a strong broker knows and has experience on how to do exactly what Maria's stating, is restructure the lease, restructure the guarantees. There are a million ways to do it. And, with LOIs, with partial guarantees, Subway started this many, many years ago in their rollout. Part of their clause for a Subway is that they could walk away anytime after the third year and hand you $80,000 and go. And that's a good example of a one-year rolling guarantee after a certain time period. That whole idea is not new. It is just, there are a lot of landlords who need to understand it. And in this environment, they need to really understand it. And they need to get somebody, whether it's you as an investment counselor or broker, to explain the different options. There's no such thing as a normal guarantee anymore. And we're in the middle of about 5 of these landlords, and they're all over the board. We're doing a large deal now that's $1 million a year of rent to us. We're the landlords, and they won't show us their financials. And I said, great. I said, then you know what? Don't show me your financials. Don't get a corporate guarantee. I want an 8-month letter of credit. And you know what he said? Okay. I called my partner. I said, works for me. That covers our TI. It covers our commissions, our lease cost, and the time period if they roll out. And so they don't have a corporate guarantee. We don't get to see their financials. It's a national tenant, but I'll take the LOI.
You called their bluff and it worked out for both parties.
Well, it's about being creative on our end. Kind of the theme, whether you're a tenant, a landlord, a real estate developer like David. Sorry to not on here, because his family has been creative and very successful over the years. But the creativity has to be in all aspects of brokerage, leasing, retail, development. That's really the entire key going forward. And again, with real estate is always, and retail real estate has always been about change. And you've got to see the change coming, and you've got to adapt to it, and then you're fine. But if you don't, after 33 years in this business, if you don't change what the change is, problem. But you got to sit down and think about it. And as you've mentioned, look at all the different ways that you can get a tenant to be happy, whether it's term or guarantee or concessions. If you work through it and you open your eyes and you can see the change that's coming, which we all can right now. It's here. I'll leave one other comment. My favorite thing is I used to get asked in the middle of last year, when are things going back to normal? There is no normal. Okay, we're not going back to normal. We're not going back to pre-COVID. Pre-COVID wasn't that good. People don't understand. Retail was struggling pre-COVID. So to try to go back to pre-COVID, A, it's not going to happen, and B, it's not a positive thing to do that. So we have to look at our environment as this is a tremendous opportunity to move forward and to restructure leases and guarantees and types of tenants and do pop-ups as we're talking about. And a lot of the suburbs that Rick deals with have got it. We're still training the people in the city, the aldermen and the community groups that don't quite understand as easily as Arlington Heights or Kinsdale. Some of the suburbs got it. But the whole key is see the it's coming. It's not going to go back and adapt to your part of the business. So it's just a matter of advice.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm worried about is new ownership coming in and taking a look at our underwriting and our rent roll and seeing only 1-year leases, right? Ultimately, we're selling a lease. So I just want to know if maybe in the future there's some kind of educational effort for people that are new to investing in commercial real estate to sort of adapt to this flexible leasing and be okay with it moving forward, and having not the assurance, but somewhat that somebody else can come in afterwards. Does that make sense?
Rick, do you have any additional thoughts on this?
I think a lot of it has to go to the underlying lender. What they'll accept, what risk factor they're going to deal with in that. all deals are made in a vacuum of time. And, if when we've been through these hiccups in the past, you don't want to lock in a loser. So, a lot of times, you do a 24-month extension instead of a 5 or a 7-year extension at a reduced rate. So, smart landlords know how to deal with this. They've been through recessions before, and they've been through tough times before. And and if they locked in a bunch of losers, or they're going to pay for it dearly when it comes time to sell. And lenders, criteria is going to be as tough as it's been in the past.
Anything else, or we're set? Great. This has been a wonderful panel. And I look forward to next year having this, and hopefully you all joining us again, and many more people in person, but I'm sure they're enjoying it at home. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you. We had 100% audience participation today. So
Yeah, we did have 100%. Everybody that was here asked a question. I was thinking that, and I love it. They're all good questions.
Kim, I forgot to talk about your entertainment reference. I just remembered entertainment.
We're
I'm
still
getting
live.
credit no matter what.
So we should assume that like